What's up, everyone? Welcome to a championship edition of In the Slot. I'm Eric, you all know that, but we're with three champions. We've got the head coach, Eric Lean from the Adelaide Xtreme, the general manager, Tash Farrier, and one of the captains of the Xtreme, and the comeback story of the year. He can still skate. I thought you couldn't skate anymore, Sharps, and now you are hosting.
I can't really, let's be honest.
But you're here anyways, and it's a championship show. So Eric, Tash, Sharps, because it's a championship show, we're going to use, ironically, the Brewers team sponsors beers here. We'll crack a beer for the championship one. Congratulations. Cheers, everybody. Cheers, cheers. Yeah, let's go. How does the championship beer taste?
Yeah, pretty good.
That was a big, that was an awesome game on Friday, right? Like, can you walk me through what was the pregame message to the group before that game, knowing there was a couple guys out on them, but you had the chance to close out the cup?
Yeah, I think it was just about capitalizing on the opportunity. So we knew that they were going to be a little bit light on. We had a couple outs, but not what they were dealing with. So it was just about grinding it down. It was about, we were going to have three lines basically playing against two lines or playing against four defensemen. So you didn't have to win it in the first period, but you could just grind and grind and grind, and eventually the results would go your way.
I know they lost, they were missing like Zach Boyle and stuff like that, but did it feel kind of like a trap game, or one where you could like put your foot off the gas, that classic case a little bit, and be like, yep, we might be okay?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of chatter amongst the boys, and I think the clear message that we were trying to kind of establish within the group was that we just had to play it like it was any other game. We didn't want to go into it thinking, oh, they're missing key players, we can take the foot off the gas and have a bit of fun tonight. And yeah, we just had to go into it like they were icing a full squad, and we needed to do what we needed to do to win.
How'd you see it from the stands, Tash?
Yeah, well, it was a little bit different. I felt like the energy, and we spoke about this, was a bit different in the building that night, but I felt just...
In what way?
I'm not really sure. It was like a playoff game, but it felt like it had a bit of a somber mood. I'm not really sure what it was. It could have just been my nerves, but I think the boys stuck to the game plan and just played quite consistent throughout the whole time. So I enjoyed watching the game, obviously.
I think we mentioned on the broadcast, it felt like one of those like Tampa Bay Lightning closeout games, right? Whether it's in like the Eastern Conference Finals or the Stanley Cup, it's just shut down the opposition. Goaltender gets a shutout. Like that was a classic hockey shutdown game.
Yeah, it was a good one to be a part of as a coach. So to not give up a bunch of high danger chances, but I think that has something to do with what Tash was saying, where they couldn't get in a track meet with us. So it couldn't be as up and down. It couldn't be as physical. It was clear the Brewers had to hold a little bit back as well. So that kind of allowed us to go into a bit more of a trap mode, because you weren't giving up a lot of high danger stuff. You weren't running around to make big hits. You could just consistently wear them down.
Was there any, maybe from your perspective, from a player on the ice, was there any big like momentum shifting moments in that final game from your perspective?
I don't think so. I think it was actually, I guess what Tash said before about the feeling in the building. I think we went into the first period break and everyone felt that it seemed a bit quiet out there, but I also think that was a little bit to do with the tempo of the game and the way we were playing. It wasn't about kind of an all-out attack. We didn't sit back, that's not the right words, but we were playing, we just did what we had to do to win. And like Eric said, we didn't have to win in the first period. We didn't have to go out in the first shift and start scoring goals. It wasn't going to be a run and gun game. It was about kind of getting through each period, winning every period, and kind of winning at the end. So I don't think there was a moment in the game where momentum shifted. I think we actually controlled it fairly well from the start to the finish.
It was really weird, right? Because I'm used to, I think everybody in like this chaos league, goals are coming in bunches sometimes, right? Like you have like a 4-minute stretch, there might be 5 goals. This was 1 goal in the first, 1 goal in the second, 1 goal in the third. Pretty similar style all throughout the game. Like it felt like maybe the most systematic game in general across all the boards, no?
Yeah, I think the playoffs were like that all the way through. I mean, a couple of 3-2 games. The 6-4 game was an outlier, but even that didn't feel like a 6-4 game, and then a 3-0 game. So yeah, it was kind of like there was a lot of fun during the regular season, and it was pretty wild. But when it was time to clamp down, the guys were able to do it and play proper, right?
OT. Yeah, the first 2 games went to OT of this series, and that was a whole other experience, because how many guys had played in Australia the 3 20-minute stop times and then have to go to sudden death overtime? Like, that would have been a different experience too.
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone in Australia has played 320 stops and then overtime. So yeah, I think for an old man like me, I certainly didn't want to be playing any more OT than I had to.
Just too much ice time.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, one of the key players in this game was, I mean, he didn't score, but Xander Wardlaw late in the game, he drew a bunch of penalties. Like he was kind of a little bit of a pest in a way for the Brewers. We got a little highlights package here of him just on the end of a lot of attention. And is that something? Can somebody break down Xander Wardlaw for me, basically?
Well, Xander's he's an interesting guy. So he's introverted off the ice, and he is the exact opposite on the ice. He got under people's skin. He got under other fans. He got under a commentator's skin. She couldn't stand him. Like, he just had that thing about him where he could kind of grind you down. And when you started to see this with, Pope's was 17 minutes to go. We see Stevie's with 6 minutes to go.
And a double minor.
Right? We saw Sack take one as well. Like, on the bench, that's actually a really good feeling, knowing that they started to put the cue in the rack and they were going to take that time to get back all the things he had done to him during the season, as opposed to try to finish out the game and finish out hard. So I would have struggled playing against him. I know as soon as the season was done, he started squawking at me because he knew he didn't have to deal with me anymore, right? Like, that's just the kind of way he is. But he was fantastic to have in the room. And obviously, as our leading point getter, he was unbelievable to have on the ice.
Was that, I mean, you did your homework on pretty much everybody that you drafted. So what was the book on Xander Wardlaw coming from interstate? Bit of an unknown quantity, I guess, here.
Yeah, so he's obviously good friends with Jeremy and has played juniors, I think, with Andrew Chen and a couple of other guys. So that we had a bit of context of who he was. But I think the main thing for me when I spoke to him, he's just like, he's a young guy, young 20s, willing to move into state, willing to come over here and start anew just to play hockey. He was keen, he wanted to be here for game one. There was no sacrifice too big for him to be here, and I think that was just enough for us to get him on board and to see what he's done and put on a show. I think that was credit to Xander, and I know that he's got bigger goals, and to get a bit of highlight reel and to show what he can do was really positive for him for the big picture stuff as well. So,
what was it like playing with him?
Oh, he was great to play with. I'd hate to play against him, probably. I mean, yeah, he's got a ton of swagger on the ice. He likes scoring goals. He likes letting people know when he scores goals. So he's the kind of guy that if you play against him, he gets under your skin. And I think it got to the point in that game where, they might not admit it, but I think a few of them kind of knew it was over and it was their chance at retribution, where they maybe felt like they weren't going to hurt their team if they started going after him. So I don't think it was a specific thing he did in that game that got people angry. It's probably just the culmination of what he did all season in terms of the success he had on the ice and the success he had against them. I mean, the game before he had 5 goals against them. So
Is that good?
I wouldn't be overly happy if one of them got 5 against us. So I can understand the frustration.
Because he also copped a lot of crap, like just in terms of like sticks and people taking the body on him. And
his resiliency can't be underestimated. Like he did. He took a lot. He took the best that Hamburg had to throw at him. He took the best that Reese Bounty could throw at him at the start of the year. Like he took a lot. I think against the Stars when Connor Smith hit him really hard on the blue line. And 4 seconds later, the puck was in the back of the net, and it was him, right? And he did the same to Hamburg in his 5-goal game, where Hamburg was taking care of him in front of the net. All of a sudden, shot on net, rebound, and it's in, and it was him. He didn't shy away. He didn't back down from him. He's very resilient on the ice. It's a good quality.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun to watch because he was always a storyline. Because he always found a way to be the storyline in a good way, right? Because some players go out there and they might end up being the storyline in a negative way, but Xander was always scoring goals or drawing penalties. He was fun to watch.
He didn't back down from any of it.
It was one of the toughest, and the MVP of the finals vote was really, really, really hard because it was between Jeremy and Xander in full transparency. There was a lot of conversations going on. It was almost an even split where like half the people were adamant it had to be Xander, half the people were adamant it had to be Jeremy. We did give it to Jeremy. He got a shutout in a league that they hadn't allowed less than 3 goals at any point during the season and in a closeout game of the finals. The team obviously played great in front of him, but obviously why you drafted Jeremy Friedrich?
Yeah, I think it was a good way to
marqueed him, sorry, not even drafted him.
Yeah, correct. So we were the only team to marquee a goalie, and to have him stand up the way that he did and produce a shutout in a game, like a championship game, I think that just credit to Jeremy. And we obviously knew that, he had those qualities, and the team was able to play up in the way that they did because there's that trust there. I mean, and obviously all the goalies are good in this league, but yeah, we picked Jeremy for that reason. So I was very happy to see him get the MVP for the finals.
Do you feel like he elevated from the finals, from especially towards the last half of the season to when the playoffs started?
Yeah, and he's got a lot of pride as a goaltender as well. He knew the stats, he knew where everybody was at, but when it was time to lift, he was as cool as he was fantastic to have, and I probably underestimated his leadership abilities as well. So for a 19-year-old, come 20-year-old, to be a leader in that change room with a lot of older guys and strong personalities, he really lifted in the finals with his leadership as well. It was good to see.
Could you feel that with Jeremy as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not. It's pretty unusual for a goalie to have a letter on his chest, but I think if you were going to put one on someone in that room, it would certainly be on him.
Marquee player for a reason. So, what did the celebrations look like over the weekend? Like, how did you debrief when you finally lift the trophy? I'm sure no one just went home right away.
Well, I think Shaza probably had most to say about the celebrations.
Yeah, I don't know if there was much of a debrief. There was plenty of drinking.
Yeah.
There was some champagne
Cheers.
getting around the room. It's probably a bit too much sharing around to that cup, which has a few guys in COVID protocol this week. We ended up at the pub. I'm not entirely sure what happened post-pub. I went home. I'm old enough that I had to get home. I had a 3-year-old's birthday party to attend on Saturday morning, which I did graciously, I hope. And I had to make sure I got our good friend Jamie Woodman back to Tash's place so he could get on a plane to Perth at 6:05 so he could work at 9 a.m. I think Perth time. So yeah, if anyone in Perth had a hungover chiropractor on Saturday, it's probably our fault.
Sorry.
Yeah.
How'd you guys on the weekend? Like, okay, what about like when you were at home? Hoop was over, you're at the Mile End, you're having a couple drinks, whatever. You get home, you get those few quiet moments. Like, what were those first thoughts you had when reflecting on the season and what it kind of meant?
Oh, well, that's the end of a long season, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Like, we've been going pretty much hell for leather for 6 months.
And now it's over.
And now it's over. There's no more planning. There's no more strategy. There's, all the messaging and all that sort of thing. So it was nice to be able to just kind of sit back and be able to, quietly message a few of the guys saying, well done for the season. And kind of we had a bit of a reflection between sort of Tash and Stu and myself. And yeah, it's, as much as I'd like to say we had a ticker tape parade, I'm same as Sharbs. I was splitting wood and looking after 3 kids. Like, you fall back to grace pretty quick.
Yeah, look, I didn't party too hard. I had a drink and went home because I was a taxi for Jamie Woodman. So we let him stay out and have a bit of fun, and we made sure that he was home and packed his hockey bag up and got him to the airport on time. So it was pretty relaxed for me.
It's a good point you make, though, right? Because in the season, it doesn't really stop, right? Because even if you're not playing, you're watching the game on the Friday, you're getting the scouting report, what's happening on the Saturday. Guys are in and out, injuries are happening, COVID's happening. Things are constantly changing that you can't really afford to be like, yeah, I'm just going to take a few days off from thinking about it.
There didn't feel like there was a day off at all through the course of the season. It was a lot more full on than what I was expecting. But
Fun,
again,
though?
yeah, I had a great time. It was a blast. But you've got 20 odd players. You've got practice stuff going on. The COVID, that just every time somebody was ringing you, you just were thinking, you'd get a phone call on game day and you didn't even want to pick it up, thinking like this guy's going to tell me he's got COVID. And we had a really bad run there for a bit where. Yeah, if I got a phone call at 7:30 in the morning, I knew somebody had rat tested positive and the game plan was changing. So, yeah.
So go back to the start of this all when, Tash was named a general manager, and that was it. Like, Tash was the general manager. There was nothing else in place. Didn't even really have the team name at that time. It was just, Tash is going to be a general manager. So then you get your coach. So what was the first conversation like that you two had in terms of just getting the season rolling, I guess?
It was a pretty informal chat, wasn't it? So pretty much.
Really?
Yeah, it was just here at the rink in the party room down there. I think you just had a training. Oh, I don't know what it was, but we just sat in that room and I just proposed the idea, and I just, I'd reached out to him on the social media and just said, hey, can you catch up for a chat? And he just said, oh, yeah, sounds good. I'll go away and think about it. And I was like, okay, no worries. And that was pretty much it for the first chat, wasn't it?
So had you two ever worked together or been involved with anything hockey related before?
Being oppositions in
A grade,
club.
yeah.
Yep. And I said to the boys after the game, like I explained the context of it all, and just obviously thanked Eric for his contribution and everything that he's brought to this team. But yeah, I didn't know Eric before this, and so for us to go ahead and do this, and I spoke to everyone in South Australia and a couple of people nationally, and I said, if you could name a coach, like, who would you want to coach you? And I asked like top end coaches, who would you want to coach you? And his name came up so much, and I'm like, that's our guy. And so then I just had to obviously plant the seed and hope for the best, and he came on board, and I'm forever grateful for that.
So then how did you know that you wanted to then work with Tash? If you didn't have a relationship with her before, if you played against her, but that's pretty much it. Like, how did you know that you wanted to work with Tash then?
Well, it was pretty succinct what the message that she was trying to deliver, and she was able to sort of say, well, the league's going ahead and my team's going ahead, and this is how I want to run things, and this is how it could work. And there was a lot of energy there. There was a lot of passion to the project. So it's pretty quick to realize that somebody's sort of saying, I want it to be professional, I want to build a winning culture, and just started to outline it, and you go, yeah, well, I'd like to be a part of that too. That sounds pretty good. So, all right, I'm in. So I drank the Kool-Aid. I believed what she was saying, and yeah, there was no excuses. Tash delivered on absolutely everything she said she'd deliver on. So glad I did.
So then draft happens, you draft players, you draft some old guys like Sharbs over here, and then Sharbs is all of a sudden playing hockey again, and then all of a sudden he's got a letter on his chest. But what was your first impression? Because again, you all of a sudden you had the general manager, you had the coach, Stu was going to be involved, you pick a bunch of players, you did your homework, whatever it was, then all of a sudden you're a member of the Xtreme. What was your first conversations then with these two?
Good question. Well, I think Eric called me first and said, how do you feel about playing D? And I said, well, I haven't played D since I was about 7 or 8 years old. And he said, well, sounds like you're playing D this season then. So that was actually, I think, almost verbatim, that conversation. But it was really, I think Eric kind of asked me what I could commit to, because I think I was late signing up to the draft. I'm pretty sure I was actually at the pub after work with Ollie, and Ollie had signed up, and it was the Friday that the draft was closing. I'm pretty sure I would have been signed up about a minute before the closing time of the draft. And to be honest, I wasn't sure if I would play, and that I kind of just thought, well, if I don't sign up, I can't play. If I do, then I can make that decision later if someone's willing to draft me. But it was more, we had conversations about what I could commit to. I think they were both open and honest and kind of willing to accommodate me. I mean, I've got 2 kids, I've got a business that I run, so being kind of completely dedicated to it probably wasn't possible. But I think Eric also it's the second time Eric's dragged me out of retirement, for those that don't know. So Eric probably also banked on the fact that he knows how competitive I am, and that if I turned up, that I would probably put more time into it than I should, or more time than I have. So I think those were the conversations that were had, and then from day one I was pretty committed, because I don't like to lose. So.
Can you confirm this?
Oh, very much so, yeah. And it was a conversation that was repeated with all the guys that were kind of over the age of 30. Was, Sharps said there's a commitment level issue, and I said, well, I've got 3 kids and a job, and I said to Tash, there's a commitment level, and she gave me the minimum of what I needed to commit to be a part of the program, and I gave that on to Sharbs and to a few others and said, well, this is the minimum that I've signed up for, and if you can do the same, we're in. Probably the only guy that balked a little bit was Huxley. He said, no, I just want to coach. And I said, well, I'm going to draft you anyway, just in case. And two trainings he lasted. And then he was in.
Because the player list came out, and then all the GMs and coaches got the player list, so you could see who was available. So how many conversations did you have with, how many conversations did you have with other teams?
None. I only spoke to Eric.
But then that was before the draft.
Yeah.
So that was just kind of doing the homework of saying, yep, this guy, we want on the team. Let's see.
Yeah. So Tash did an unbelievable job. We knew where every interstate guy was at. We absolutely know what commitment level was coming from the interstate. I took the 30 plus crowd and sort of dealt with them and the goalies, and then between sort of Jeremy, Joey, and Tash, they had pretty good intel in terms of what was going to happen with the others.
Because I remember before the draft, because all of us were kind of chatting a bit, and it was like, oh, what's the game plan for the draft? What's it looking like? And you're like, yep, you got plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and nothing's probably going to go the way, so we're going to go with plan D, and that's going to come up there. And then after the draft, you're like, that could not have gone better. Like literally everything. Like, is that still a true feeling?
The draft is one of my best takeaways from the season.
Yeah, Tash?
I enjoyed it immensely. We felt we did really well out of the draft.
You got that thing sitting over here.
I got this thing sitting next to me. The guys that said that they would commit and join and play did. We took a little bit of a flyer with the last guy in the draft, but he worked out okay too.
Heard of him, yeah.
Yeah, I heard of him. So I don't mean to talk for you, Tash, but I don't know how that could have gone any better for us.
Yeah, the only thing that I can reveal now that everything's over is we actually had Yoan and Sack lined up in like 2 of our picks because we were going for all of them. So I'd chatted with all of those guys, and I knew that Tom wanted to come in, but he would only come with Yoan. And then, you know, we also had some other guys in the mix as well, and we went for Xander a little bit early, just to make sure that we could lock him in.
That started a chain, though.
And that's what started it. We decided to go early. We probably could have left him because I'm not really sure how much research the other guys had done. I'd spoken to the other interstate guys, and they hadn't heard from anyone. So we had planned to get Yoan and Sack on our team as well at some point. We had doubled them up, but it worked out the way it did, and I couldn't be happier, to be honest.
Yeah, and I feel that when David and Graham got drafted, I think things started to change.
Yeah, other guys were like, okay, we got to get the older guys.
Well, I must admit, like, there was a couple picks after that where you go like, whoa, you're lucky you guys just made that pick, because we had a fair bit lined up where we felt that we could come out of there, that the first half of the draft was sort of going to pick itself. We felt that if we could win the back half of the draft, we would have more depth than the other teams.
So was there any moments in the draft where you're like, hey, let's pick this player because we think he has this asset that will be handy in the finals or late in the season, and then late in the season or in the finals, you're like, oh, yep, that's why we drafted him?
Well, Jamie Woodman was upfront with Tash in the beginning about a commitment level. Like, we knew we weren't going to have him all season, regardless of what happened to the Perth Borders. But that selection was made thinking finals in mind.
Yeah.
That there was
He made a difference.
Yeah. Well, we kept asking the league, like, is there no minimum games played requirement? And it kept coming back, no. And that was a real sort of green light for us. The other one was we were asking if there could be any trades after the draft, because we had sort of been thinking like, well, if things really go bad for us, we'll just draft all the goalies in one fell swoop and trade them out later if need be, sort of thing. So we were sort of
Plan
thinking,
A, Plan B,
Plan
Plan
A
C.
and Plan B,
yeah.
but yeah, Jamie in particular was, you know, if there's no minimum games requirement and we could fly him over for 1 or 2, and we didn't know that the playoffs were going to be every Friday. Like, we thought, well, maybe if it's sort of Friday, Tuesday, Friday, and you bring him over for 7 days and you get 3 games out of them, you
still got 3 games out of
That'd
him.
be pretty handy, yeah.
What about you, Tash?
Well, just building off of Jamie for a situation, like the first game that we had for our team, he was like, I'm going to come. I really didn't expect that. I didn't expect him to be there. We picked him as a last draft pick just so we had him there to utilize at some point if we needed, and he wanted to come. He was like, no, I'm coming for our game 1. I'll be there. And I was like, wow, like, this is amazing. And I think like that was probably the only game where we literally had everyone. Any other game after that, we did not have a full team, a full roster from memory.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I think that might be the only game you had everybody.
Yeah.
Because obviously
No, we didn't
hurt.
have everyone because Espo wasn't here yet.
Yeah,
Espo wasn't there.
True,
Aaron
true.
Widger was still out with a
He
pull
was
drawing.
with a
and-
groin.
You didn't
Okay, fair
didn't
enough,
have a
yeah.
full roster once.
No, we
No.
didn't. There you go.
No.
That answers that.
So that worked pretty good. Drafting a lot of centers seemed to help too,
Yeah.
because when you lose Noah Maley and Joey McDougall, you could.
Yeah, well, like the uncertainty of the time with the COVID, having versatility ended up being one of our greatest gifts, because with the depth there, if a guy's out, you do have guys that can step up. I mean, you look at Noah Maley, who stepped up in the game that Joey wasn't there. Like, Eric had called him and given him a role that he spoke about on this show. We just had guys that could, like you said, next man up. We just had people there that were versatile enough to fill the gap and keep the plan. So
You had to be accountable for your draft pick. That was the whole thing. Is it's not like picking a team or whatever. You were drafting, so if you came out of the draft and you didn't have any defensemen, or if you didn't have any centers, well, that's on you. That's your fault. You got to figure it
you
out for
can
the
pick
rest
them.
of the year. Yeah. So we had a bit of a mock draft thing that Jeremy ran, and he's like, oh man, the wingers are going to go early. We got to get as many wingers. We don't have to get any wingers. We got to get center and D, man. Otherwise, you're in trouble, sort of thing. And so that's
Someone gets hurt, you got to bump them around.
Yeah, that was the only way that you could do it.
Then, because it was weird, because you had obviously a lot of kids on the team, right? A lot of like 19, 20. Benson and Wardlaw are young. But then you had some veterans that were mixed on the team. And like obviously, Sharps, you were one of them. So a word that you even heard a lot of players mention when they're on the show is mentor, or like someone that could help me with my game, whatever it was. So what did that mean to you? Because your name was thrown around a lot. It's like, yeah, this guy kind of like helped me out, mentored me a little bit, like gave me, like, what did that mean to you?
I think it was great. I think it was really interesting to see, I think, a shift in attitudes with a lot of the young guys. Like I think, a lot of us older players kind of all left around the same time in 2017, I think it was. And a lot of these young guys have kind of come up and probably haven't had a lot of that kind of veteran leadership. And I think it's really important for young guys just to see how older guys go about it, like what we put into it and what we can kind of get out of it as well. So I think it was really interesting to see the buy-in from the young guys. I think one of the things that we had on our team from day one was just a consistent level of buy-in from anyone. Like there was no anyone who, if anyone has an attitude, it was certainly checked at the door. I didn't see any of it in the dressing room, and everyone worked together as a unit, and everyone was happy to play a role. There were games that some of us played more than others, and there were games that some guys had to sit out, but there was never any issues around any of that. Everyone knew that it was kind of part of I guess our quest to take that thing home at the end of the year, and everyone was willing to do what we needed to do.
Team buy-in, and that probably starts from the top.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we set the tone early, and I couldn't be more proud of what we put together, and that is a credit to the boys, because we just had that consistent attitude the whole way. And like whether that be at peak or just in the meetings or at trainings or just in general attitude, like Sharps was saying, it was really nice to watch, and it developed well over the season too.
So when did you know you had a championship winning group? Was it like 2 seconds before the clock expired, or like when? Like, just honest question, when did you know that you had a championship winning group?
I think internally I believed obviously the whole time that we could do it. There was no point in time where I didn't think that we had the capacity to do it, and I would hope that any other team would probably feel that way too. But I mean, I would never ever let myself get to that point. I envisioned it, but even in the last game, I still wouldn't let myself believe it with 3 minutes to go. Like until we were actually there and it was happening, that's when I would actually obviously let myself realize that we'd done it. But I had full faith in the coaching group, I had full faith in the leadership group, and just in our club in general that we had the capacity to do it.
What about you, Leaner?
It was after Christmas for me. So, and it's not specifically because of the work at Christmas, but the 5 weeks that we put in at the start of the year before the season kicked off, and we really benefited from the schedule because we started a week later than everybody else, and we started a week later after Christmas than everybody else as well. That was a real big benefit for us. So we had a full 5 weeks to work on things before the season, systems. We didn't work on power play much until after we had seen the first game. And we're like, oh, wow, we better work on that a lot more than what we've done, right? So,
and it came good. You scored a power play goal every game.
Yeah, so we came out of that before the season, and we actually had our system set because we had 5 weeks, and the guys responded really well. So that next block of 5 weeks at Christmas time, we worked on principles and skills, and we got to refine things. And that really set us up for a good push in the second half. I think that made the biggest key is the work that the guys did over.
And that's when you knew, you're like, okay, yep, this could be big.
They had put in the work at peak by then, so we were no longer battling fitness issues. Everybody was now on board, and they were able to finish out games, and we were able to do a lot more things because the guys had put in the work in October and November. If they hadn't put in the work there, I don't think we would have been as far along as what we were. But after that, I feel like other teams had to catch up. Like the Brewers caught up. Mitch and I spoke about that. The Brewers, they figured it out and they started to catch up. But
they got on a roll.
Absolutely. But it felt like for us that we had started out in front. So, okay, they're catching up to you sort of thing, but you can now start advancing other parts of your game and move forward.
What about you, Sharps? When did you know?
I think it's hard to say that you knew before you get there.
Yeah.
But I think the feeling in the room was good all along. Like I think the group was tight from day one. Everyone bought in, it it was interesting to see, even if you compare it back to the adrenaline days where we struggled to get a handful of guys to an off-ice session, and we were like going to peak on a Tuesday night, and the gym was half full.
And
of
then
guys,
Saturday
guys
morning
from our
after a
team.
big one, yeah.
Yeah, so it was amazing to see that. So I think early on, as a kind of player on the team, it was really kind of interesting, I think, to see how tight the group became really quickly. And I think, growing up and playing on other teams and winning championships in the past, there's such a kind of strength to the bond that you can create in a room that actually leads towards that. It's not always the most skilled team necessarily that wins, but that kind of bond that you can create with those guys, so that everyone's going to go into it and they're going to give what they've got on and off the ice to make sure that you get there. So I think it was pretty evident early on that we had that, which is obviously really important. But I think coming out of Christmas and coming through January and starting to just see how the systems that we had implemented, they were working, and I think even watching games and listening to you guys kind of talk about them over the games, like I don't think it was any secret that kind of people knew what we were doing. People knew it was working, but I don't think anyone really worked out how to play against that. And I think that's because the systems we were using, and I think this is a credit to Eric and Stu, they were simple, and we didn't kind of overcomplicate anything, and there wasn't an answer for everything. So it still allowed guys to kind of operate within that system. It wasn't about that, if X happens, you need to be here, and then you need to do that, and then you need to do that, and then you can't, you kind of just get stuck on the ice thinking instead of just playing hockey. And I think that was an important thing that we kind of tried to reiterate a lot through the leadership group. When anytime we came up against trouble, it was just like, just play hockey. You know how you got here? You got here by playing hockey, and there's this umbrella that we're operating within, but just go on the ice and play hockey. That's all you need to do.
That's actually interesting hearing all your responses, right? Because like every championship winning team has those winning elements, right? And you obviously have just identified that right away, being like, yep, commitment's there, people are going to peak. Jamie Woodman's calling, being like, that's all there. Obviously, like you have to be healthy, you have to have a couple little bounces go your way. Of course, that's going to happen, and every team's going to take advantage of it. But that was I love how all three of your responses are similar but vastly different all at the same time. It's really cool. We got to wrap things up in a second here, but was there a defining game for you? Each of you, I guess, in terms of like, yep, this is the game that I'm going to think back to the most because this is everything we did well.
Well, no, for me there was two, and it was bookended on either side of Christmas. Those were the two games that you had to win. It was the first time that we really faced adversity. We had lost the Brewers.
That was the one after the 7-6 game?
After the 7-6 game. So you can throw that one in the bin. Like that, sometimes that just happens. But it's the first bit of adversity where we're coming in. If we don't win that game, we're 2-2. We've lost our advantage. Joey breaks his rib.
The Stars are first place, I think, after that game.
Is spot on, sort of thing. So that was really important that the guys could solidify the fact that go into the break 3-1. The advantage that you had, you maintain. You get to feel good about yourself for the next 5 weeks. We came out on the other side. We had a lot of COVID and problems through Christmas. Tash jackpotted the game for us, sort of thing. Threw some bonus money on the table for the boys, because if we could win that one coming out of the Christmas break, all of a sudden 4-1. Nobody's chasing you anymore. They're fighting it out for second. They're fighting it out for a position to get there. You've all but solidified your spot. So for me, those two games, because we were down 5-3 and we were able to come back and win that game maybe 7-5 as well against the Brewers.
Yeah, so the one, you lost 7-6 to the Brewers. Yep. The next game was 4-3 over the Stars, and they played hard that game.
Yep.
Stars played actually very well in that game, right? Noah Maley had to step up for Joey McDougal. And I think after that game he said, if you didn't know who Noah was, now you know.
Yep.
That was his game.
Yeah, and good on him. I'm an 18-year-old kid. We spoke on the phone afterwards. How'd you feel? And he goes, yeah, I'm ready to be a centerman. Yeah, it's time you put me as a centerman, because he'd been out on a wing since then. But yeah, and then we fell behind.
Down 5-3 in the third period.
Yep, and we fell behind. We battled back. We got the win, and that was it. After that, you just had to win one more. You're in the finals, and that's all you needed to do. Get to the finals, be part of that best-of-5 series. So, yeah, there was two for me.
You put a jackpot on that game.
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to put something else there for the boys and make it a little more fun as well. And it was a big game, so I just thought, let's just do it.
Well, and debuting as coach too, right?
Yeah,
On the bench.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez, yeah. We spoke about that in one of the slot shows. That was, ebbs and flows of this season. I've learned a lot as we've gone on. Like from a GM perspective, that all the games were important, but from my lens, it was about keeping the continuity there for routine, making sure that the meeting was happening, making sure that the jerseys were there, making sure that the guys were at peak the next day, and making sure that the consistent routine was there so that each game felt the same, and that was important for our routine. So that was my lens. So every game was important in terms of that. But yeah, I can't pick out one particular game because we look at it differently. But I would, the comeback from the Brewers was a big one, but different lens.
What about you, Sharks? As a player on this.
I'd probably say game 2 of the finals. I mean, game
Down 1-0.
Game 1, we go down in overtime. Game 2, gets to overtime, and I think you naturally can't help but think, like if we go down back-to-back games in overtime, it's a long way back, to try to pull 3 wins out after losing back-to-back overtime games it's a big hill to climb. And I think winning that game obviously leveled the series at 1-1, but I also think it kind of brought belief back into the room. I think particularly going into that game, there was probably maybe a little bit of doubt from the guys. Like I think there was maybe a little bit of overconfidence going into the finals with the way the regular season went. Guys kind of thought, we're going to go in here and we'll kind of walk through this. And I think that first loss kind of made people reconsider that. And then that second game getting to overtime probably had guys a little bit more worried than they needed to be maybe. But I think it kind of helped to get that over the line. And then I think the takeaway from the room on that was like, all right, we've had back-to-back overtimes. We're tied 1-1. It's a new series. It's a best of 3 now. We got to grind it out.
So after Geyer scored that goal, was it a feeling? Was it more of a feeling on the scale? What was more, relief that you won the game, or joy that you won the game?
Oh, probably relief.
Yeah,
to be honest.
right?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to go down 2-0. I mean,
Obviously, you're happy. Like,
yeah,
I'm not taking that away.
If you go down 2-0 as well on overtime losses, you feel even worse about it.
And you're just wondering, what if? Like,
yeah, like 2-0 back-to-back overtime losses could be 2-0 your way as well, right?
How do you think the emotional swings for Jordy Geyer would have been in that game too, when he's going down, takes the penalty on Harley Anderson, the same guy that burned him in game 1, and then has to sit on the bench hoping to God that they did not score on that, and he ends up getting the winner? Like, that's hockey in a nutshell, right? Like, 1 second you're like, uh-oh, and the next minute you're like, oh yeah, sweet.
Well, that was the same game we almost had an own goal, wasn't it? Or was that the next game?
Oh yeah, that was the same game as the own goal. Goes down one way, and
that's the perfect way to describe a game of hockey. I think it goes, you almost score on your own net to tie the game, and then you skate it up ice and score to go up by 2. So
that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So we got to wrap things up. So thank you very much on behalf of everybody in the NHSL for all your commitment throughout the season. But what is going to be, and very quickly here, your big takeaway from the year that you think you're going to hold on to from a long time from this unique Australian hockey experience?
Again, I've got 2.
Perfect.
All right. So one for me was the toy drive that we were able to do
Cool.
In December. I think that was just awesome what the hockey community did.
Blew out of the expectations too.
Yeah, spot on. So, and that was everybody. That was Stars, Brewers, officials, announcers, JB, Badge. Everybody chipped in and did a lot. So that's a big takeaway for me. Me and my kids got to go down to Vinny's and donate everything, and
Cool.
we got to take all the accolades. But that was the whole community did that. That was incredible. I mean, and obviously the win and getting the cup and that, but the whole draft thing for me, that's going to be a big one. I've never been a part of something like that. I don't know when you get to do something like that again. It was really neat. It was an awesome experience for Stu and myself and Tash. It was great. It was great fun.
The draft probably feels better knowing that you can, like, that gives you confirmation that the draft went well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everything in hindsight now, right? If it had, yeah, but no. So that was really good. That was the first.
It was a
time
fun
that-
night.
It was. It was a funny. You guys took a big risk. That's a big risk doing that as a live stream. Inviting all the players down. If players didn't show,
Players were wearing suits to the draft. Like,
the atmosphere could have. You guys took a huge risk for that, and the payoff was awesome. It was a fantastic night, and it kicked off everything that the season became.
it was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just very, very proud to have been a part of initiating the league. Like the idea was there, and I messaged Ryan. I just said thank you for asking me to be a part of this, because that was all it was. Someone literally just called me and asked whether I want to be a part of it, and to see what has come from that phone call, and to see everything that's developed and all the connections that we've made, and all the hockey that's been played, and the excitement, the community, all the feedback from the community of how amazing it was in their Friday nights. Like, what am I going to do with my Friday nights now? So everyone's like so connected to this, and I think just solely being a part of it and doing everything from the ground up, that's just been one huge experience for me, and I feel so grateful. And it's actually showed me, like, obviously I played hockey for like over 20 years, but it's shown me that I can enjoy hockey in a different lens now. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed everything about this role. Like, I can love hockey in a different way, and it was super challenging at times, but it was just so valuable, and I'm just grateful to be a part of it. So
I think the biggest takeaway is that I think hockey in South Australia is in a pretty healthy place. I think it was nice to see, people like yourself and the other people around you kind of push the envelope a little bit and create something new, and have the nous to go out and do that. It's not an easy thing to do. It could have gone the other way, and your name's attached to it. So I think it was amazing to see that, and I think, to see the talent that's coming up through the junior ranks here, the amount of young guys that I think, really showed that they could play hockey, and that they could elevate too. There's no secret that was definitely, a step up or more from the local kind of premier competition, and to see a lot of those guys kind of be able to come up and take a step up and still be able to play at that level was, I think, really nice to see. And I think it means that, there's a kind of bright future here for a lot of young players, and
might be good for the Avalanche.
Might be.
You
never know.
You never know. On behalf of everybody, thank you very much for a great season. Congratulations on winning the trophy. That's pretty cool. We went way overboard tonight, so I apologize to everybody, but I feel like it can't interrupt a good chat. So, Eric, Tash, Sharbs, thank you so much, and we'll see you when we see you, I guess. That's us signing out.